Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Adam Pearce and I'm a consultant part of the professional services team here at Workbooks. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm excited to everyone. I think there was a problem with my mute there. So thank you for joining the webinar today. So my name is Adam Pearce and I'm a consultant part of the professional services team here at Workbooks. So I'm looking forward to talking you through projects today. So whether you're new to Workbooks or already familiar with our platform, our aim today is to give you some insights into how these project tools can help you streamline your operations, collaborate better with colleagues and drive better business outcomes. Firstly, a bit of background about why we decided to introduce project management into Workbooks. It was essentially after listening to client feedback. We had a lot of requests to start integrating with other project management platforms or looking to add custom functionality into their existing Workbooks instance to help them manage projects. So we decided to make this standardized functionality. So let's have a look at some of the key features that projects brings and that we're going to cover today. So that will be everything from managing tasks within your project to team members, how we track time and set budgets, and then recognizing that revenue that we're delivering and how we can resource within our team as well. So as we run through the webinar, feel free to message in any questions as you go, and we'll review those in a Q&A section at the end. So let's dive into Workbooks and have a look at what projects looks like. So you'll find the projects record within the start menu under projects. Now you'll see that there if you either have a pro license within Workbooks or if you're using the advanced projects module. So once you open up the projects record, you're greeted by the all projects landing page. You can see on our project screen here is we've got that broken down by project type. So we've got some customer projects at the top here. With those, we're able to define the customer that the project relates to, how much effort's involved with the project, some start and end dates of the project, and an overall project status. We've then got some internal projects. So we've got an internal admin and our office refurbishment, an internal marketing project to launch a social media campaign. The other views we've got down the left-hand side are My Projects. And that works the same as all the other My screens within Workbooks. So we'll show you projects where your user, in my example, I'm logged in as Anthony, is the assigned to on the record. Specifically in the projects record, we also have My Collaborations. And what that will do is it will show you projects where your user is the assigned to. So I can see the 4 projects my user Anthony is the assigned to, but also projects where my user is part of the project team. So they've got involvement in some way in the project, they've got tasks assigned to them, and they've got a role within the project to play. We've also got project templates, which we're going to come to a bit later on. So just going back to all projects, as mentioned, it works very similar to all other landing pages within Workbooks, where we can reorder the columns, we can add filters and create saved views. We can also add it to our desktop or pin it into your Springboard. So we're going to look at a few different use cases that's going to cover a range of the functionality you'll get with projects. So the first use case we're going to have a little look at is a basic internal project. Now this is going to make use of functionality you'll get with pro licenses within Workbooks. So with this project type, we're going to look to create and assign out different project tasks. We can see how we can collaborate with the team using things like comments to get updates on the task from colleagues, and then just track the overall project and task progress. So let's have a look what that project type looks like within Workbooks. So as mentioned, this is an internal project for a social media campaign. So we've got a project here. So when we open up the record, it'll look pretty familiar to other record types within Workbooks. So we've got our tabs along the top. Some of those will be familiar to you, things like activities, related items, and emails. And then we've got some tabs that are specific to projects. So we've got our main tab, which is giving you some high-level information about the project, where we can set its project name and description. We can see the assigned to and the start and end date of the project. We've got an overall project status and project health, and we've got a type of the project. So in this one example, it's an internal marketing project. On the right-hand side, you'll see a project summary. So in this example, we've got a task summary where we can see we've got 3 closed tasks, 2 underway, and 3 not yet started. So some other tabs specific to projects are the team and the project task tabs. So let's have a look at the team first. So for a user within Workbooks to be able to access the project and view things like the tasks and update tasks, they've got to be a member of the project team. So you can see here we've got Andy, John, Anthony, and Jane. They're all part of this project team, and they've got different roles within the project. So Andy is a participant, and so is John. And we've got Anthony and Jane, who are the project managers. Now those roles can be defined in the manage roles section here, where we can add new roles. And the roles essentially define the capability that that user has within a project. So a project manager, for example, will have full permissions to create, view, modify, and delete essentially anything within the project and project tasks. Whereas a participant might have some restricted permissions to only be able to edit or update a task rather than delete, for example. It's just also worth noting that system administrators within Workbooks do have full access to all projects by default. So let's have a look at our project task screen. So within our project, we can list out the tasks involved within that project. So we can see here that we've got 8 different tasks grouped into categories. So we've got a planning category, a content creation, execution, and monitoring and feedback. Each task can have a task description and who it's assigned to, a start and due date on the task, a progress percentage update, a priority level, and we can also see the overall status of the task. So we can see that our first 2 tasks in our planning category are complete. Again, just like all the other landing pages, we can filter these project tasks down. If we only want to see our open tasks, for example, it's quite easy to create filtered views of those. So the glaringly obvious thing on this screen is we've got a task for Jane to write the post copy for our content for our social media campaign. Now that's red because the due date has passed, so that was due yesterday, and the status on that is not yet started. So let's open up that task and have a look at that in a bit more detail. So once we've opened up the task record, we can see any detailed description we've got around the task. We can see the status that we saw earlier, that that's not yet started. And we can see that there's no progress percentage been updated on the task either. So what we can do is we can make use of the comments functionality, and we can tag Jane in the comments and ask her for an update. Jane will then get a notification which can lead her straight into this task record, so she can either update the task itself or reply to the comment to give us an update on where we're at. So let's create a new task within this project. So let's say after our campaign's complete, we want to create a new task to review the performance of the campaign. So under our monitoring and feedback category, we can create a new project task to review the campaign performance. We can assign out to a relevant user. So in this example, I'm going to give that to John. We can set when we want that due. So that's going to be for the end of January. So we can then just save that task, and that will get added into John's task list, and he can get a notification that he's got a new task assigned to him. So the view of tasks we're looking at the moment is a grid view or table view. And we've got a couple of other useful views within project tasks that could be really useful to you. So if we look in the view section, we can view as a calendar, for example. And what this will do is it will give us a day, week, or month view of the tasks we've got scheduled within that project. Now, it will also help you on the right-hand side show us any overdue tasks we've got. So that's that task that was late that we've asked Jane for an update on. So let's just say, for example, Jane's responded on that and say she's going to pick that task up tomorrow. So we can either from the task itself or from the side panel, we can drag to rearrange those tasks. So I can put that in the diary for tomorrow. And what that will essentially warn me is that I'm pushing that task past the due date. So we can either leave the due date in the past and it will schedule it to be worked on tomorrow, but it will let us know that that was late, or we can bring the due date forward. Let's do that in this example. So once you've made any changes in your calendar view, you can just save changes. The other really useful view within the project task screen is the Kanban view, or you might know it as a board view. So what that will do is it will give you a breakdown of your tasks by status. And again, you can add filters to the screen in the same way. So we can see at a glance that we've got 4 tasks not yet started, we've got 2 underway and 3 which have been complete. And if we want to progress those through those stages, it's as simple as just dragging them across into the next category. So we know that Jane's task she's going to pick up tomorrow, so we're going to move that across to underway. And again, we can just save changes to do that. So once we've got that categorized by status, you can also recategorize that by assigned to, for example. So we can see how many tasks each user's got assigned to them. So I can see Andy in this project's got 2 tasks, Jane has 4, and John's got 1. So we know Jane was running late on one of her tasks already. It might be that we want to take one of her future tasks and just reassign that. So I'm going to assign that to myself. Save that. Let's come out of that. Check screen. So as mentioned, so everything we saw in that first use case is making use of functionality that you get within your Pro license within Workbooks. So let's have a look at our second use case. So in this example, it's a customer project, and we've been asked to redesign a website for our customer. The functionality we'll see now is making use of the Advanced Projects module. We're going to carry on some of the functionality we saw in our previous use case, so being able to create and update tasks. But we've now got this idea of effort. So essentially we can estimate how long we think each task is going to take us, and we can then log time against those tasks. We can categorize that time that we're logging as chargeable or non-chargeable. And in this example as well, we want to charge our customer different rates depending on the user that's logging the time. So we might have a designer within our website project charging out at £75 an hour. We've got a website developer charging out £200 an hour, and our project managers are going to charge out at £150 an hour. So let's see how we can work that and how that looks within Workbooks. So we've got our website project here, so we can easily identify that and see who that customer is. So let's open that up. So as mentioned, we can now set, as it's a customer type of project, we can now define who that customer is. So we know that this website project is for Atlantic Services. Now on our summary panel, as well as having our task summary, we can now see a summary of how much effort the project is as a whole and how much effort's remaining. We can also extend this out and see how much time we've logged against the project so far. So let's have a look at our project team in this example. So you can see we've got those different roles laid out. So we've got our designer and our developer and our project manager. So each member of the project team is assigned to the role. And then we're able to define that rate for the role. So as we mentioned earlier, we've got our designer charging £75 and our project manager at £150 and developers at £200. You can go into a bit more detail as well. For example, if Debbie was a developer, so would by default charge out at £200 an hour, you can set a role specific to the member. So if we wanted to only charge out Debbie at £100 instead, we can go and set a custom rate just relative to that member. So let's have a look at the project task screen on this example. So again, it looks pretty familiar to that task screen we were looking at on our previous use case, but we now have this idea of estimated effort and log time. So we had to create some mood boards for our customer for this new website, and we estimated that was going to take us 8 hours. We've logged 8 hours worth of time against that, so there's no effort remaining and that task has been complete. So let's just have a look how that looks within the project task. So if you're looking at the task itself, you can see where we've set the estimated effort. You can see time entries within the task, how that time has been spent. So that's 8 hours, which is adding up to our logged time, and there's no effort remaining. We can see how we've used comments to upload a PDF of those mood board drafts, and we can see how Jane's given us some feedback that they look great, and we can show those to our customer. So we've got a task on our project now to review those designs with the client. So my user Anthony's got 2 hours assigned for that meeting. So let's open up that task and we need to log our time for that meeting. So now we're in the task, we can go into log time. Now, if your user is a project manager, you are able to log time for other users. Otherwise, and by default, you'll be logging time for your own user. So I'm going to say I've spent 2 hours, and notice now I'm logging that the remaining effort on the task has dropped down to 0. So this is chargeable time, and we can enter in a description of what that time's been spent for. That's really useful for 2 reasons. So it gives your project manager an overview of how that time is being spent, but also likewise, you can give your customer that view of where their money's been spent also. So within our description, I can say that this was our review of mood boards. Now, as mentioned, we're logging 2 hours of chargeable time and our task was for 2 hours. But let's say during our client meeting where we were reviewing those mood boards, they essentially said that they wanted another call tomorrow to discuss things a little bit further. So what we might want to do is we can amend the remaining effort and say that we still need another hour for this task. We can save that. We can update the status to say that it's underway. We can update the progress and maybe add some notes or in comments as to how we've been getting on with that. So as we close that task, what we'll see on our project task screen now is we've got 2 hours originally estimated. We've logged 2 hours of time, but we still have an hour of remaining effort left against the task. And we've logged that as underway. So tomorrow comes around and we've got that follow up with the customer. So we can go back into that task. We can log our time, and it was an hour, and it was a follow up. And we're going to give that to them free of charge. So we can untick the chargeable checkbox. And we're now happy that that task is closed. So there's no remaining effort needed. So we can leave that blank. We can log the time and we can then complete the task. That will then update to show that we estimated it out at 2 hours. We've logged 3 hours against it, but there's no effort remaining and that task has now been complete. So when we have a little look at the time entries tab, we've seen time entries specific to that task, but the time entries tab in the project will give us an overall view of all time that's been spent within the project. We can see by who and when, whether it was chargeable or not, and the description of how that time has been spent. Within our work in progress screen, what that does is it summarizes those time logs against each task. So we can see that 3 users have logged time against our task to create mood boards. So Anthony, Dylan, and Jane. They've all logged a different amount of chargeable time, but as you can see, we can recognize that revenue based on their hourly rate that's defined on that role we saw earlier. So based on the time that they've spent and the rate of their role, we're able to then recognize revenue against that at the relevant rate. So I'll show you on our third use case is how we can then go on to recognize that revenue and through to invoicing. So let's come out of that project. So our third use case we're going to have a little look at is again making use of advanced projects functionality. And it's a customer project, and we're looking to implement a new CRM system. So we're going to carry on some of the functionality we've seen to create and update tasks. We're going to be able to log time. But in this instance, we've got a constrained budget we're working towards, and we're then going to look at how we go on to recognize that revenue. So I can see I've got an implementation project within my project's landing page. And I know this is to implement a new version of Workbooks for Atlantic services. So on the right-hand side now on my summary panel, I've got the task summary and the effort summary, but I can also see how much budget is remaining for the project. Now, if we have a look at in the budget tab, and we'll show you how that's broken down. So essentially my customer's placed an order for 40 days for us to implement the CRM, and we're quoting them £1,000 a day for that. So we've got a total budget of £40,000. Now, during our initial scoping, some extra requirements came out. So the customer was happy to buy an extra 10 days worth of budget to cover that requirements, but we've given that to them at a reduced rate of £500 a day. So if we have a look back in our main tab and under our budget details, we can essentially see how we now get a blended day rate. So if it was as simple as one budget, which was £1,000 a day, that becomes our day rate. But because we've got multiple budgets on there, we can essentially recognize revenue at a blended rate of those. If we have a look in our delivered tab, we're able to see that the customer actually paid 50% of that invoice up front. So they've paid for £20,000 of the project up front. Now that's just a point of reference, and I'll remind you of that a bit later, and we'll come to that shortly. So if we have a look at the project tasks tab for this project now, essentially it's going to look pretty familiar to you now. We can see all the tasks and when they're due and how much time has been logged and the estimated effort, but we've now got this idea of budgeted time as well. So within each task, we can define how much of our budget pot we've got relevant to that task. Now, it will likely be at the start of your project, your estimated effort and your budgeted time is going to match. So for example, for configuration part 1, we've assigned 48 hours worth of budget, 48 hours worth of effort. We've assigned 48 hours worth of budget, and we've logged 48 hours worth of time, and that task has now been complete. With our configuration part 2, we estimated it out at 50 hours, so we've given it 50 hours worth of budget. However, we've only logged 46 so far, and that task has now been complete. So you can see we've got 4 hours remaining budget left over. Looking a bit further down, I can see my user Dylan has got some training to deliver. We've got 32 hours worth of budget assigned to that, and he's logged 28 so far. So we've got 4 hours remaining in the budgeted amount for that task. So let's just say, for example, Dylan's going to go and deliver some training, and he's on site longer than expected. So he's going to go and log some time, and I'm going to log the time for him. So I'm going to log some time for Dylan, and I'm going to log 7 hours he was actually on site for. Now, what we're going to get a warning for is to essentially tell us that there's no budget left on that project task. So any time that's marked as chargeable over that budget amount is going to go in as overrun. So we're not able to recognize that revenue if it's in that overrun pot. So what Dylan might want to do is, before he's logging that time, notify his engagement manager or his project manager about that. The project manager, what you can then do is you can assess the budget within the project. So as an engagement manager, I can see that I've actually got that 4 hours left over budget from my complete task. So I can reduce that budgeted time down to say we actually only needed 46 hours of budget against that. And what you'll see is that's freed up essentially half a day's worth of budget into our remaining budget pot. So we can then assign that remaining budget over to our training task. So we can adjust that budget up to 38 hours, no, 36, bad maths. So all our budget has then been allocated against our tasks. So I can then resave that. So now when Dylan goes in to log his time, he can log his time as 7 hours, chargeable, and I can still see that I've got an hour remaining in the pot. So I go and log that time, and then it's not going to go into overrun in that example. As you can see, within the time entries of the project as a whole, we get the overview again of any time that's been spent, whether that's chargeable or not, and how that was spent. Within our work in progress screen, we can see again that time log by task, how much we're able to recognize and whether any of that's gone into overrun. So we can essentially see in our work in progress screen, in this period, we've delivered £36,000 worth of work to our customer. So let's just say that's in the month of November. We can then recognize that revenue by approving those time logs for delivery. So what we can do in our work in progress screen is approve for delivery. Now, as you remember I showed you earlier, we'd already invoiced the customer £20,000 up front. So we can see that in our delivery log is that we've invoiced them 20,000. We're looking to recognise £36,000 worth of revenue for this period. And what it knows it can essentially do is take £20,000 worth of that from our prepaid pot. So it's recommending that we only need to invoice the customer off for the difference. So our suggested invoice amount is £16,000, which is that differential. So what we can then do is we can enter that in our invoiced amount. And then we can approve for delivery. So what that will essentially do is it will lock down those time entries. So if I go back to our time entry screen, they're all now marked as delivered. So we can no longer edit those time entries. Our work in progress screen is now clear. So next month, as we start logging time, that will start building up again. And in our delivered screen, we're able to now see that prepaid amount that they've paid. We've now got a second amount we can invoice, and we can go and raise an invoice for that. And we can see how much we've in total recognized against that project. Now, it is in our roadmap to automate the actual invoice creation part on delivery, but that's not yet in place currently. So let's come out of that project now. So we've looked at 3 different use cases. What we're going to do now is just have a look at some of the additional features around projects that you will get with the advanced project module. So at a glance, they will be project templates, timesheets, resource scheduler, and just show you some example dashboards and reports that you and your team might find useful for managing projects day to day. So the first thing we'll have a little look at is project templates. So we've got a project template for our customer implementations. We'll just show you essentially how they can streamline your project setup, make them slightly more efficient. So we've got a template name. We've got a description of what the template's used for. We can preset our project tasks for an implementation project. So we can set some skeleton tasks up for what we might do. We can predefine our implementation team. So when we've got a new implementation project come in, our team is already part of that project. And likewise, we can predefine a budget. So we've got a standard day rate and amount of time that our implementations take. You can predefine those within the template. So when you've got a new project come in, you can either create a new project from blank, or you can create and choose to use one of your templates. So the next thing we'll have a look at is timesheets. So we've had a look at how you log time within an individual project task. Now, internally in our team here, we've got some people that would log time as they go, or some people might log time retrospectively at the end of the week for everything they've done for that week or that day. So within the Start menu and under Projects, you'll see we've got a timesheet function. So what that will essentially do is it will show you all of the project tasks you were due to be working on that week and any time that you've then logged on that project task. You can go back through the week. So if you want to look at last week, you can see a summary. So I can see that on Friday, for example, I didn't log all my time. I've only got an hour logged. So what you can easily do is you can go into relevant tasks. So I'm under my internal admin. I did a couple of hours of admin and I did some work on our consultancy project. And as you can see, as you're adding these times up, that will add into your summary at the bottom. So it's easy to make sure that all your time through the week is accrued. You can add in additional comments to those timesheets as you could when you were logging it within a project to say that you did X, Y, Z for that project task. As that's done, you can just hit save to save those time logs, and then that essentially adds into the project task in exactly the same way. Now, if you're brought into a task that you weren't scheduled to do, you can add a new task into your timesheet from here. So we can go and add in a new row and choose the project that it was part of, the relevant project task, and then again, you can just log your time in exactly the same way. So the next thing we'll have a little look at is the resource scheduler, which we think can be really useful. So our resource scheduler can be found in the Start menu under Projects and Scheduler. What this does is it gives us a view of the resource within our team. So I can easily see at a glance by user what capacity they might have for future workload. So if I expand my user here, I can see that for the remainder of this week and into next week, I'm scheduled for about 5 hours a day worth of work. And this is all calculated based on the start and end date of your project task and the effort or remaining effort that that task has left. So we can see at a glance the task, the total amount of effort, remaining effort that's left, and how that gets broken down based on your availability from today until the end of that task date. So I can see that I've got just under 2 hours on my phase 2 task a day to use, and just over an hour a day on project management for my implementation project. Now, I can easily see at a glance if the user is over-resourced. So Debbie, for example, I can see that based on the task she's got assigned to her and her workload, that she is over-resourced for the remainder of this week. Now, if I have a look at that task she's got for gross finance recommendations, I can see that task isn't due until the 22nd of November. So although we're scheduled to work on it between the 13th and the 16th, it's not actually due until the 22nd. So what I might want to do is just extend that out and say that we're going to be working on it into next week. And that will update the resource accordingly, meaning she's got capacity to actually pick that work up. Any changes you can make, you can just hit save and that updates those tasks accordingly. What we can also see within Debbie's profile is she doesn't work Mondays. So within a user, you're able to define what your working schedule is. So Debbie doesn't work Mondays, so it's added no capacity for her, and the capacity in the other days are adjusted accordingly. Likewise, if you only had a user that was part-time or was only working on projects for 3-4 hours a day, that can all be set within the user profile. Let's have a look at a warning we've got further down for Eddie, for example. So next Tuesday, Eddie is due to be on site with a customer to review their consultancy project. However, I can see he's on holiday. So what we might want to do is we can either reschedule that to another day for Eddie, though he doesn't look to have capacity to pick that up right now, or we can then go and assign that to another user. So what I might want to do is I can see Dylan's got nothing on for next Tuesday, is I can easily just drag that up to Dylan and save and reallocate that to Dylan. So what we're going to have a look at now is some dashboard examples of how dashboards and reports can just help you manage your projects. The first bit within dashboards we'll look at is we've created a staff holiday dashboard within our springboard here. So as we saw Eddie's holiday in our resource scheduler, I'll show you how you can add those in. So within our springboard, we've got a staff holiday calendar. Essentially what that is a calendar view of activities. And we've got a new activity type, which will come with the advanced project module, which is non-working time. So essentially we've got a filtered calendar view of activities based on the type being non-working time. So we can see Eddie's holiday we've got in there. And if we want to add any new holidays, we can simply right click on the calendar and add some new non-working time. I can add that in as Anthony holiday. When that starts and finishes, and save and close, that will add it into the calendar, and we'll also add it into the resource scheduler, so the resource and capabilities will be adjusted accordingly. Some of the other examples of dashboards that we find useful within the project is we've got a project revenue dashboard. So this gives you some insights into the financials of your project. So for example, our implementation project we were looking at earlier, you can see how we've recognised £36,000 worth of revenue so far on that project. Some of the other projects have some recognised revenue and some in progress revenue. And just like all dashboard elements in Workbooks, it's interactive. So if you only want to look at the in progress, we can filter that and do so accordingly. Likewise for recognised. Some of the other examples in the dashboards we've got in our project manager dashboard, we've got some views of the project financials again. We've got some overall project progress charts. So we can see for our strategic growth advice projects for Aero Systems, we're 69% through the project. So that's based on it being a 26-day project, and we've logged 18 days worth of time against that. So we can see where we are against and track our progress in the project overall. We can also get an overview on things like our timesheets logged for our team. So I can see Alison, for example, hasn't logged any time for Monday and Tuesday. So we can see that at a glance within our dashboard. What about a specific project user? So for example, I'm looking at my projects. So I can see the project tasks my user has assigned to them, which is essentially their task list. They can also log time from here because it's essentially your task list you can work your way through. On the right-hand side, I've also got some summaries of my time log so far to make sure my timesheets are up to date. So we've had a look at some of the features with projects. So let's just review those again. So we've looked at projects and tasks and how you can manage those. We've looked at how you manage your team members within a project and set their different roles and permissions. How you can log time within a project and set different project rates for different users or for your customer. And then some of the financial aspects of a project, so how you recognize the revenue and deal with things like overrun. We looked at project templates and also resource scheduling. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our product manager, Alex, who some of you may know, who's going to just discuss the roadmap for projects a little bit further.
Thank you, Adam. So over the next, let's say 6 to 12 months, we are planning on continuing our work on projects and adding in other features. And this is open to customer feedback. So as more of you start using projects and have things that are specific to how you use it, we can address those and work out which of those we can fit into the roadmap. But just high level, our plan at the moment, we want to add in subtasks to allow you to have that more granular task planning without having to really manage the budget and the effort at the same time. And because of that, we also therefore want to have the dependency. So as tasks move, it will bump other tasks. Milestones to help give you that view and show the customer those views as well of the high level project plan. And those both will feed into a Gantt or a scheduler view on your project. We also want to add in attributes against your project resources. So that might be what team are they in, what department do they work for. It might be their capabilities, what languages do they speak, or what areas of your product do they specialize in, so that you can use that on things like the resource scheduler to search for certain people and work out which people would be available to pick up your next project. But those will develop over time, so just keep an eye out on our future webinars and future release notes to see what will be introduced.
Great, so at this point we'd like to take any questions that you guys might have.
If you can't think of any questions right now, please do remember that you can contact our support team or your account manager. If you wanted a demo to your team, to your projects team perhaps, of this functionality to see if it would be useful to them, please do contact your account manager and we can sort out and answer any specific questions that way as well. We have a question about authorization processes for non-working time and for timesheet entry. So for non-working time, no, we've not built in any approval at the moment. We've kind of done that on purpose because there's a lot more complexity to the way that different people manage their holidays. So at the moment, the non-working time is there to store the approved things already. It's not meant to replace your HR system. And in terms of timesheet entry, yes, we do have approval process in place. So where Adam was showing you the WIP tab, for example, that we can control as to what feeds into the WIP. So you can control the approval status of a time entry, and only once it's been approved will it go through into WIP and get recognised. Or if you're not worried about that, you can have that turned off. So Adam had that turned off in the demo, but in the settings button of the projects, you can control that functionality. If you're not seeing timesheets in your start menu, I'm not completely sure why that would be, so we might just need to contact support to check that. Thank you, Rory. All right, we don't really have any more questions feeding in, so as I said, if you do think of something, just ping it over to support. They'll be very happy to help you, or to your account manager if you want them to set up a special demo for you. And we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you, everybody.